It must have been a red letter day for burglars and other miscreants yesterday, because cops were pulled in from the entire country to police a peaceful demonstration of largely old people holding cardboard placards. I'm not making it up. One of the people arrested was a blind man in a wheelchair who could not walk, who could not see, who could not even see the placard that he was holding, but he was absolutely sure that he meant what it said on the tin. It's the blind leading the blind. The Labour government, yes, Labour government, made a gigantic blunder when it sought to proscribe a group of peaceniks, civilly disobedient but non-violent peaceniks, as terrorists. Terrorists are people who blow themselves up at children's pop concerts. Terrorists are people who blow themselves up on underground trains and on buses. Terrorists are people that harm, hurt, kill other people. Whatever else was being done by the group whose name I cannot yet speak, for reasons not of fear of the law, but fear of the censor, fear of algorithm. Whatever else they were, they definitely were not terrorists. And the vast majority of British people know that that is the case. That's why the 522 who were arrested yesterday could not be charged, for if they were charged, they would have to be tried. And because the charge is terrorism with a 14-year sentence, they'd have to be tried in front of a jury. And no jury in the country would send to prison people who look like their own children and grandchildren, who only want to stop the killing, who spray red paint on weapons of war as a means, paltry as it might seem to some in power, of trying to stop the red blood that would be shed by those same weapons of war. It was an act of madness, and I would like to blame it only on the government, but I cannot, because the government very sagely referred the matter to what is laughingly called our Parliament. And our Parliament voted in record quick time in both houses, the elected and the unelected, with a tiny minority in the House of Commons of only 36 members of Parliament, voted against the proscription of a group of peacenik, civil disobedient protesters as terrorists. This is a kind of madness. Who's going to pay for it? The Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, the most overrated politician it has ever been my misfortune to encounter in Parliament across 5 decades. I have never seen a woman more overpraised, more over-promoted than Yvette Cooper. Her majority is only 6,600, and we are coming to get you, Miss Cooper, at the next election. In fact, we should have got you at the last one. The Home Secretary at least has to pay with her job for a fiasco that has already cost the British taxpayer millions. They brought police officers all the way from Wales. They didn't even have the sense to wipe out the Welsh language on their hats and vests. The Metropolitan Police could not cope with arresting 550, most of them elderly people. They could not cope with arresting men in wheelchairs who were blind. They had to bring people in from all over. The cost of all of this, 522 arrests, and the jail time overnight accordingly, with no charges. But of course, hundreds of people have already been charged. And it's the dawning realization, which that blind man could have seen coming, that none of these charges can possibly be sustained in a court of law that has led to this public relations disaster. I don't know if Labour members of Parliament who voted in overwhelming numbers for this madness, as they have supported the madness in Gaza since the very first day when they got their marching orders from their leader, the Stumer, Sir Keir Starmer. I don't know if these members of Parliament have yet understood how bad this all looks and who's going to pay the political price for it. It's not the organisation in question. If they were able to open their books, they'd have 100,000 new members. If they were able to open a bank account, they'd have $1 million before you could say Jack Robinson. The political price is going to be paid by the Labour Party, which has supported this genocide in Gaza and sought to brutally criminalise the decent British people who have risen up against it. So presumably next Saturday, they're going to have to arrest another 522. And presumably next Sunday, they're going to have to announce that none of them have been charged. And this will go on and on and on as long as this madness lasts. Now, I don't know what's going to happen in Alaska, but I'm perfectly sure that Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin will not be going there without knowing what's going to happen. No two powerful presidents like them sit together in a room not knowing what the outcome is going to be. You don't ask questions to which you don't already know the answer. That's the rubric in the courtroom, and it's the rubric in politics at this kind of level. Some in Russia are afraid that some harm will befall Vladimir Putin on American soil, though once upon a time, of course, Alaska belonged to Russia. Nash, Alaska, Nash, our Alaska, is only a social media meme, but there's a remarkable number of people quacking around behind Zelensky who think that it's a real demand, but it isn't. Russia has no designs on Alaska. After all, it was sold for a price agreed between the two parties. Like the Louisiana purchase, the purchase of Alaska has mightily profited the United States of America. But Russia and America are only 2.5 miles apart, you know, at their closest level in Alaska. And so I don't know why they don't build a bridge, actually, between Russia and the United States, Alaska. There you go. There's a piece of advice for nothing. You could call it the Peace and Friendship Bridge. And we hope, all of us pray, that peace and friendship will be the net result of the summit meeting taking place on the 15th of August. My birthday is on the 16th. I'm hoping for the best birthday present of all, namely the announcement of the end of a war which has cost the lives of millions of people, cost trillions of dollars, lost 9 million Ukrainians to the wider diaspora, most of whom, I promise you that, will never return to their home country, and landed the European Union in the mother of all pickles, because in their rush of blood to the head that they have been experiencing collectively for all this time, they have made promises to the rump Ukrainian state that will surely emerge from Alaska that it's going to be very expensive to keep. They've put them on a fast track for membership. So those of you in the European Union, get used to a very, very, very large sum of money leaving your country's bank accounts headed for Kiev. It won't be Zelensky that's in charge, of course. In fact, it wouldn't surprise me if he fled the country on the day of the summit, because he's been quacking around and getting his ducklings in a row in the European Union to try and sabotage the result of the summit in Alaska. But I fear it's too late. I fear that the European Union and its taxpayers have got another Kosovo on their hands, except much, much bigger. They've got another Kosovo on their hands in the sense that Ukraine will quickly be the fountain which issues forth sex trafficking, narcotics, weapons for terrorists and criminals, and that age-old export of Ukraine, poor girls sold into prostitution. It is estimated that in Germany right now, before the collapse, half of all the prostitutes working in Germany are poor Ukrainian girls and women. Get used to the fact that the Albanian criminals you've grown used to in your capital city are about to be supplanted and replaced by Ukrainian criminals and traffickers. Not before there's been a lot of shooting, not before there's been a lot of turf warring, but trust me, that is coming your way. The deal which my good friend Che Bose has speculated about, seems to me he's almost exactly right. If a deal is reached in Alaska, the effective border of East and West Ukraine will be the river Dnipro, which those of you who've been watching me from the beginning of this war already know that that's what I predicted right at the beginning. It is the natural border for a demilitarized zone. It may not be de facto or de jure, rather, recognition of the new Russian territories, but it will definitely be de facto, because no power on earth is going to remove the Russian armed forces and the decisions made by the referenda in those liberated territories to rejoin Mother Russia. That ship has sailed. Crimea has sailed. The Donbass has sailed. In fact, the only unresolved question now for me is the great Russian city of Odessa, built by order of Catherine the Great, the then Empress of Russia. I don't know if you've been to Russia, but if you have, and if you've also been to Odessa, you'll know that no city could be more quintessentially Russian and Russian Orthodox than the city of Odessa. It is a kind of Jerusalem for the Russian ethnic populations, not just in Russia, but throughout the diaspora. As far away as Moldova, they look to Odessa as their Jerusalem. If that remains under the control of the ultra-nationalist government in Kiev, I predict that there will be further change, perhaps not of a military nature, but of a revolutionary nature. But we'll be discussing all of this with Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis, the host of Daniel Davis Deep Dive, just a bit later from now. So let me move on to the Lebanon. As some of you know, maybe most of you know, I entered the Arab world through the portal of the Lebanon. In 1977, I went there to visit the Palestinian struggle there in the camps to which they had been driven from their Jordanian camps on Black September of 1970. 7 years later, they were all ensconced in Beirut, and I fell in love with the Arab world, the Arabic language, Arabic music, Arabic food at that moment in time. So Lebanon matters to me. The west of Beirut was where I lived, in the Fakane district near the Coca-Cola factory. I spent a lot of great times there. My heart bleeds when Lebanon bleeds. It matters to me personally. And so when I saw the ignominious, shameful, and frankly unforgivable performance of what passes for the government in the Lebanon today, openly declaring that they are taking orders from the Israeli foe that has invaded them, occupied them, bombed them, assassinated people. I was embarrassed for them. I was embarrassed to hear the Minister of Defense of Lebanon, I heard him say, I saw his lips move, "We have been instructed," he said, instructed by Israel and the United States to proceed forthwith with the attempt to disarm the Lebanese resistance. Now, they are unable to do that. That became clear within an hour or two when literally millions of people spilled onto the streets of Lebanon, condemning this decision and declaring their complete opposition to it. Now, you cannot disarm people through a sea of millions of people who support the Lebanese resistance. So they will not succeed in doing it, but they may succeed in destroying Lebanon in the trying. Because if they are acting under instructions from Israel and the United States, then it would appear that the immovable object is set to meet the irresistible force. Now, in military terms, the Lebanese resistance could polish off the Lebanese army, a conscript army, in an afternoon, and indeed has done so in the past. If the Lebanese resistance had wanted to rule all of Lebanon, they could have done so at any time over the last few decades. But they do not want to do so. Hassan Nasrallah would have been the president of Israel, of Lebanon, if Israel had not made it plain that the confessional structure of Lebanon, where the Christians have to have the presidency, the Sunni Muslims have to have the premiership, and the Shiite Muslims, who are the majority of all Lebanese, must make do with the speakership of the parliament. Israel made clear, America made clear, that this blatantly sectarian gerrymandering would have to continue. So Hassan Nasrallah never wanted to be the president because he never wanted to upset the sensitive apple cart that is the Lebanese Republic. But if they're going to try by force and disarm a resistance that is supported by millions of Lebanese, they better bring a bigger brother with them. And that bigger brother will, of course, be Israel. So Lebanon may very well be about to be torn apart by an Israeli-Lebanese government alliance, which will have grave consequences for the entire Levantine region. Its echo will be felt in Syria. Its echo will be felt throughout that part, at least, of the Middle East. And it's unlikely, and we'll hear from Professor Marandi later, that the Iranians will allow their brethren in Lebanon to go down without doing anything and everything they could in order to save them. In Gaza, well, we'll be talking to Daniel Davis about that. Stay tuned. I'll be right back.